साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Om Sri Sai Ram. We offer our most reverent pranams at the divine lotus feet of Bhagavan Baba. Today is the fifth day of Sri Satya Sai Summer Course, sixth phase. We welcome all our seniors and participants to this morning session of online summer course. I request Brother Umakanta to share information regarding today's subject and Sai Ram, Brother Umakanta.
ॐ प्रतिभासाय विद्महे प्रेमरूपाय धीमहि तन्नः साई प्रचोदयात्। Our most loving salutations at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. It is His mercy and compassion He has blessed with His own discourses, summer hours in Vrindavan 72 for this year's summer course. On this fifth day of the Sri Satya Sai summer course in spirituality and Indian culture, the organizing team, Sri Satya Sai Shiva Organization Odisha, welcomes all the participants, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters. We also welcome today's speaker, guest, Professor Sri Rangarajan sir from Vrindavan, where this summer course started long back in 72. It is our great good fortune to have him and to listen to him this summer course. Professor G.S. Sri Rangarajan, born in Mysore, Karnataka, continued his schooling till 12th class in Mithapur, Gujarat. Then he started engineering in MS Ramaya Institute of Technology, Bangalore in 90. Soon after, he was blessed to join Bhagavan's Institute as MBA student in 1992. Soon after he completed his MBA from Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prasantinilayam, Swami blessed him to join as faculty member in the School of Business Management and Accounting, Finance, Prasantinilayam campus in 92 to 2009. At the same time, he was also the placement officer and computer center in charge, Prasantinilayam, which was started that time, 2003 to 2009. Soon after, Bhagavan also added responsibility and he, with direct guidance of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, he was the controller of examinations, Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning 2009 to 2015, then director of Vrindavan campus from 2015 to 2019, and currently he is working as associate professor, Department of Management and Commerce, Vrindavan campus of Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning from 2009. It is Bhagavan's wish to have his own student as speaker for this summer course for his own children of Odisha. We have with us our respected elders, Odisha, our beloved state president, former state presidents, and many of the elders who have groomed us with us. And today, the topic to be discussed in the summer course are as follows: first, customs and character, the perishable and the imperishable, worship your parents. So these are the chapters Bhagavan's discourses, in fact, taken for today's discourse with the title Customs and Character of Indian Culture. Let us listen and welcome Professor Sri Rangarajan sir. He is so humble in his words, in his action, in his thoughts, and everything what he does in daily life is only to please Swami. Let us inculcate many of the characters of our Rangarajan sir in our daily life, where we can please our Swami. Sairam sir, Rangarajan sir.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Sai Ram, placing my humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. Shri Narayan Prasad sir, the state president of Sri Sathya Sai Seva Organizations, Odisha, the former state presidents, the several office bearers of Sri Sathya Sai Seva Organization who are present with us today, Shri Umakanta Subudhi sir, the coordinator of the summer course, personnel of the technical support, and my dearest brothers and sisters. A warm Sai Ram and good morning to all of you. I'm very lucky today to speak on this wonderful session, the Sri Sathya Sai Summer Course in Spirituality and Indian Culture, organized by the Sri Sathya Sai Seva Organization, Odisha. My greetings to the 200 plus participants of the summer course, the wonderful youth from all over the state of Odisha. A very good morning to all of you. The topic today that I will be speaking on is customs and character of Indian culture. As you can see, I'm sharing a PowerPoint deck with you so that you do not get bored just looking at my face. There will be something interesting for you to see on these slides. So the topic Indian culture, which Bhagwan always used to refer as Bharatiya Samskruti, a more apt word would be Bharatiya Samskruti. It's such a vast topic, as vast as the ocean. It is very difficult to cover all the facets of Bharatiya Samskruti, but let us try and explore a couple of wonderful insights from this great culture based on Bhagwan's discourses in the 1972 summer course. Going back to Bhagwan's discourses, Swami always defined Samskruti or culture. He would actually quote T.S. Eliot and say, culture is a way of life. Culture is nothing but the way we live. And therefore, Bharatiya culture is the way Bharatiyas live. And let's keep in our mind, Bharat is not a geographical land. Bharat is a way of life, and therefore it is not restricted to the geographical boundaries of a country called India. Now, when you say Bharatiya Samskruti, the Sanskrit word for culture is Samskruti. What does Samskruti really mean? Samskruti means transformation. Therefore, Bharatiya Samskruti is all about transformation of the human individual. Now, let us try and understand a little more about this concept of transformation. You can see a deck. I hope it's clear to all of you. And this is a wonderful analogy given by Bhagwan. He says that rice is a staple item which we all consume as part of a regular food. I'm sure all of us know the process through which the rice reaches us as the rice grains as we see. It starts with the paddy in the farm. Once it is harvested, it is called paddy. Then it undergoes threshing, winnowing, pounding. All the husk is removed, it is cleaned, it is polished, and finally it reaches us as rice grains, which you keep in a cooker and then it gets cooked and we consume it so happily. But for rice to become rice from paddy, it undergoes a huge transformation process. That is what Bhagwan says is samskruti. It has to go through this transformative process. Therefore, Bharatiya Samskruti also is a transformative process. Just like paddy gets transformed into rice, what is it that Bharatiya Samskruti does? It transforms human beings into God. Bhagwan says our true nature is divine. So Bharatiya Samskruti is that which enables human beings to understand their true divine nature through the process of refinement called spiritual sadhana. That is why Bhagwan called it the summer course in Indian culture and spirituality. He did not dealing the two words because culture and spirituality are intertwined. Culture or Samskruti is meant to take us onto the spiritual path. Look at this beautiful jewelry here. I'm sure many of you may be very tempted to buy it. What does Bhagwan say about this? Swami says you go to a goldsmith and you have this beautiful jewelry there and you feel so happy. But do we know how this jewelry has been made? He says initially you give some gold to the goldsmith and then he hammers the gold, puts it into fire, puts it at very high temperature crucibles, melts it, hammers it, twists it, and draws it out, and finally he makes this beautiful jewelry that we see here. So Swami says that unless we also get processed like this, we cannot become wonderful instruments in society. We are also like the raw gold. Now, unless this raw gold, that is we human beings, undergo this transformative process, we cannot really achieve our true potential in our lives. That is Bharatiya Samskruti. We have heard of many types of culture. Agriculture, what does agriculture do? It prepares the land, the soil, right? It prepares it so that we can sow the seed and then harvest the crop. Sericulture, what does it do? It rears silkworm. It creates a platform where you can harvest silk. Aquaculture helps us to harvest aquatic creatures. Similarly, Indian culture helps us to harvest good human beings. It's such a beautiful way of thinking. Bharatiya Samskruti helps us to harvest good global citizens. So now let's start exploring these beautiful multifaceted Bharatiya Samskruti. As I said, let us touch upon few facets of this so that we are able to appreciate what Bharatiya Samskruti is. Now let's start with the foundation. What if we had to really distill Bharatiya Samskruti and touch its main foundation? Bhagwan says this is it. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. There is only one truth, but we all look at it in different ways, and therefore we see so much of diversity around. But if we hear Bhagwan speaking, if we hear to Swami's discourses and read them, all the time he reminds us, look at the unity. Look at the unity. Yes, there is diversity around because of our mind. It perceives things as different, just like as you can see here, these 5 blind men, as you can see on the slide. They all are touching different parts of an elephant, and Swami narrates this anecdote very humorously. He says there is this one guy who touches the trunk and he says, hey, this is something like a rope. Somebody else touches the leg of the elephant, he says, oh, this is like a big rock pillar. Somebody else touches the ear of the elephant and he says, no, this is like a fan. So different people perceive it in different ways, but are they wrong? No, their perception is right. But you unfold the blinding, they will all agree that yes, this is an elephant. Same way Bharatiya Samskruti says, you look at everything in diverse ways. You say he is Mr. X, he is Mr. Y, this is this city, this is this country. But if you remove the blindfold of illusion, we will all agree that there is only one truth that is existing, and that is God, that is divinity. So discovering this divinity is actually the essence of Bharatiya Samskruti. Look at this beautiful Sai Kulwant Hall, a snap taken somewhere in the early 2000. You see Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba delivering a discourse there, and you see this beautiful chandeliers which is lighting up the entire hall. And Swami, as we know, a great orator, a divine orator, would use everything available to convey a truth to us. And therefore, very often, he would point out to all these bulbs. He would say, look at it, there are thousands of bulbs in Sai Kulwant Hall, light coming out from all of them. Some bulbs may be 100 watts, some bulb may be 75 watts, different bulbs. But the current, the electric current, see, look at it, such a simple example. He says the current in all of them is the same. So Swami says you may have 7.5 billion people living on planet Earth. You may have 64 lakh different types of species existing on planet Earth. But in all of them, the essential energy is the same. That is divine. This understanding is what Bharatiya Samskruti strives to give human beings. In this context, there is this beautiful story Swami narrates in the summer course discourses. If you would have read the 1972 discourses, he gives the beautiful story of Adi Shankaracharya. I'm sure all of us would have heard of Sri Adi Shankaracharya, who propagated the Advaitic philosophy in spirituality, wherein the philosophy says that there is no difference between the individual soul and the divine soul. They are one and the same, which is what a Bharatiya Samskruti tells us, but it appears to be different. And the whole journey of life is to understand its union. There is this beautiful story, and I will play this video clip in, I will play it. You may not be able to hear the audio very clearly. This was a movie made long back in Sanskrit. So let me play this audio and I will explain to you what the conversation is. Let me narrate this story before I continue to play this. Most of us must be aware of this, that once when Sri Adi Shankaracharya was walking on the banks of Ganga for his regular routine, suddenly this person whom we see on the screen, in those days they used to call them the the lower caste people, and they were known as Chandalas, right? So this man comes in and immediately Shankara says, how can you come in the way of a great saint? I'm an ascetic, and when I'm walking, you're not supposed to come in the way. Now this is all a drama enacted by great masters just to teach us a lesson. So the moment Adi Shankara says this Chandala, he immediately, the story goes on later on to reveal that he was none other than Lord Shiva himself. Lord Shiva had come in the form of Chandala. So he tells Adi Shankara, whom are you asking to move away from your path? And listen to this very carefully. There's such a beautiful message in this. The Chandala says, are you asking this body, which is made up of the skin, to move away from your path? And he says, logically, if that is the case, your body is made up of the same skin, same leather that my body is made up of. then where is the difference between two? Why are you asking me to move away? Or the Chandala goes on, are you asking the life force within me? Are you asking the Atma, the soul within me to move away? If that is the case, logically, the soul is all pervasive. There is no question of the soul moving from one place to the other place. So please clarify, whom are you asking to move? And then I will definitely move. Adi Shankara, the great master that he was, instantly realized that this is no ordinary person. And see the lesson of humility. Adi Shankara was such a great master, but he immediately says, "Oh master, what you have told is the eternal truth. And therefore, whomever you may be, whosoever you may be, since you have demonstrated such high wisdom, you become my master." Saying so, Adi Shankara runs and falls at the feet of this Chandala. What a beautiful story. On one side, the story tells us how the same unity pervades everywhere. Where is the question of difference of caste, creed? It's all imaginary. And on the other side, it teaches the lesson of humility. Learn from others. This is what Bharatiya Samskriti says. If somebody else knows more than you, do not feel jealous. Learn from them. Let's continue to look at this video. It's a brief.
ब्रह्मैवागमिदं जगच्चसकलं चिन्मात्रविस्तारितम् सर्वं चैतदविद्यया त्रिगुणया चेतम् मया कल्पितम् नित्यं यस्य दृढा मतिः सुखतरे नित्ये परे निर्मले चाण्डालोऽस्तु विजोऽस्तु गुरुर्येषा मनीषा मम
So that was the beautiful story of Adi Shankara. In fact, looking at Bharatiya Samskriti, all the festivals that we celebrate in our great country, in our great nation, are all reminders of this unity in diversity. Can you just take a guess how many different types of festivals we Bharatiyas celebrate? I'm not talking about only one religion, because Bharat is not about any particular geographical land. It includes all religions. How many major festivals do we celebrate? I did this search and I was surprised to find that though there are hundreds, at least there are 36 to 40 major festivals that we celebrate in our nation, which means almost twice a month, almost thrice a month, we keep remembering God. These are instruments to keep reminding us of the higher goal in life. And all these festivals, Bhagwan says in his discourses, it's not just about ahara and vihara. It's not about eating nice sweets or taking good rest because it's a holiday. No, but it is about samskara. It is about turning our mind towards God. Mind towards God. Why mind? Because Bhagavan says, Mano Moolam Idam Jagat. The basis of this entire creation is the mind. It is the mind which is creating an illusion between what is real and what we see. What I just mentioned about unity in diversity. Why are we not able to see unity in diversity? It is because of the vasanas that we have accumulated. The vasana is a Sanskrit word. A typical understanding of it is a lot of desires, mental concepts, which we have accumulated over a long period of time, we are unable to see this unity in diversity. Now, how do we do that? This is beautiful story or an analogy given by Bhagwan. You see here, there is this sculptor who is sculpting this beautiful idea of idol of Lord. I think it is Lord Dhanvantri, if I'm not mistaken. There is this pot of nectar in his hand. And of course, Bhagwan, says he was sculpting Krishna, some example. And Swami says when the sculptor first sees the rock from which he wants to make the idol, he visualizes the Lord's idol within the rock. And then what does he do? He just chips away the various unwanted parts of the rock, and finally you have the idol in front of the sculptor. So please understand this process, such a beautiful process. The sculptor is not really inventing an idol. The idol is already there in the rock. All that the sculptor does is tuck, tuck, tuck. He just removes the unwanted chips, and finally, what he has visualized in his mind, the idol of the Lord, is in front of him. So Bhagwan says this is what Indian culture does. This is what Bharatiya Samskruti and all our festivals, all our customs is basically to remove all the unwanted parts in our life so that the true, pure divine life emerges. So as I said, all our customs and our traditions are actually to enable us to divinity. Let us take a few examples. I have picked this up from various discourses given by Bhagwan. Today, we know in the COVID scenario, the Namaskar has become so popular and universal across the globe. In fact, the leaders of all the nations are now saying no, because of social distancing, let us do Namaskar, let us not shake hands. But do we know the symbolic meaning of Namaskar? Several people give several explanations, but Bhagwan says basically it is the 5 karmendriyas, the 5 jnanendriyas. Basically, karmendriyas, jnanendriyas are the 5 organs of action. That is our eyes, nose, ears, skin, and the tongue. And the corresponding sensory perceptions which enable this sensory organs to work are called the jnanendriyas. You join both of them and you keep it against your heart, which is symbolic of the individual soul. And then you do namaskar saying that these karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, let them enable me to see the unity between the soul which is within me and the soul which is within you, because essentially they are the same. So actually every time we do namaskar, we must keep in mind that basically we are trying to see the unity between the two individuals. So namaskar is not just a symbol, it is a very sacred symbol. 5 karmendriyas, 5 jnanendriyas. So why don't we all do this, right? Let's do this so that we remember. I request all participants, please take your one hand, the left hand. These are the 5 karmendriyas. Visualize that these represent the 5 organs of action. Take the right hand. These are all the 5 sensory perceptions, the perception of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling. Put them together and then bring it straight to the center of your chest, which represents the heart. Please feel the individual soul that is actually energizing me. I am that life force. And now think of the person opposite to you, and then you say, Namaskar. I'm trying to see the unity between you and me, between you and me. So please, henceforth, whenever we do Namaskar, keep this in mind, because this is what Bharatiya Samskruti teaches us. Look at this beautiful photo. It's a very popular photograph of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi visiting his mother on his birthday. And he is an epitome of Bharatiya Samskruti. He is doing what most of us do, but unfortunately what many of us are giving up these days is touching the feet of his mother. Why should we touch the feet of the elders? right? It's a mark of humility. It's a mark of gratitude, and the energy flows through the toes of the feet, and therefore we bend down and show our humility, show our gratitude to the elders who have given birth to us, who have shaped us, who have molded us. And therefore, what does our Bharatiya Samskruti say? Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atithi Devo Bhava. Let me explain how Swami beautifully explains the importance of the sequence of these 4 lines. Many of us may have heard these 4 lines, but why does it come in the sequence? So Bhagwan says, the first person whom you would have known in this world is the mother, because you're born from the mother. The first thing that happens when the child is born is the mother takes the baby into her arms, and therefore the first manifestation of God that we see in this manifest world is Mata. So mother is the first God. Then what does the mother do? The mother will say, hey, see, he is your father. See, he is your. She points to the father and tells the child, he is your father. Pitru Devo Bhava. Then the child grows and it's time for going to school. And therefore the father comes, takes this child to the school, and he says, he is your teacher. So the father points to the teacher, Acharya Devo Bhava. And the Acharya, or the teacher, teaches the student to interact with all other students, all other people around, who all in a sense are Atithis or guests in this world. Therefore, Atithi Devo Bhava. In fact, the essence of this is everybody is divine. Everybody is divine. All are divine manifestations. And let's look at this. Any guesses? The slide is about? Yes, if you have guessed it right, it's Lord Rama and Sita who are going for the exile based on the command of the father. Whether Ramayana happened or not is inconsequential, but look at the message of this beautiful story. Many people may argue, did it happen? Did it not happen? We know it has happened, but look at the messages that the story conveys. Lord Rama gave so much importance to the words of his father, right? He says, this is the dynasty, this is the legacy where the word is given greatest importance, and my father has promised Mother Kaikeyi 2 boons. Now she has asked for the boon. So come what may, I have to fulfill my father's word and keep up his dignity, keep up his respect. This is the type of reverence we must have to the words of our parents. Yes, of course, some may argue that what if the parents tell you to do something wrong? That is a different story. We must use our discrimination. But most of the time, most of the cases, our parents only tell us what is right for us. And if by chance there is any conflict of understanding, it is our duty to explain to them properly in the current context why you think another approach could be desirable. If you're able to convince them, fine. Otherwise, it's always better to take them along and obey their command. Mahatma Gandhi, we know Mahatma Gandhi is also revered for his respect that he showed to his mother. Swami narrates this beautiful story, which some of you may know, some of you may not know. So let me take the opportunity to narrate the story that when Mahatma Gandhi was a young boy, the mother would do a particular type of vratam, a particular ritual in the house, wherein unless the cuckoo makes its sound, cooing sound, she would not break her fast. So from the morning she would not eat anything unless this cuckoo in the garden would make the sound, and then she would consume food. Now Bharatiya Samskruti is full of these type of rituals, and one may wonder what's the meaning in all this. But essentially it taught us control over body, control over mind. I mean, that was the essence. It may be woven in any format. So the mother was following this routine, and Mahatma Gandhi used to feel very sad that the mother had to stay hungry so long. On one occasion especially, it so happened that the cuckoo, for whatever reasons, did not coo. And so the mother was fasting, she was hungry. Gandhi could not take this. And so what he did, he went to the garden and imitated the sound of the cuckoo bird. And he came running to his mother and said, Mother, now you can break your fast. The innocent mother could not really understand what happened, and therefore she had a breakfast. But then she got a thought and she said, Hey, did you do this? To which Mahatma Gandhi smiled and accepted, and mother was so upset. She said, How could you do this? How could you cheat and make me eat food? And what appeared to be a ordinary prank for Mahatma Gandhi became a very serious issue for the mother. And she said, No, I mean, why ever did I give birth to you? How could my son be dishonest? And that was the day Mahatma Gandhi realized the importance of honesty as the foundation of everything we do in this world. And he promised his mother that never, ever again he would utter a lie. And that is why we know he stands for Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara. So see the respect he gave to his mother, see the great lesson that the mother taught the child, and look at the value of honesty. Satyameva Jayate is our very motto of our nation, and that is what Bharatiya Samskriti teaches us. In fact, Bhagwan goes on to say, if we cannot please our physical parents, who are the physical manifestations of God, how can we ever think of pleasing God? And many of us may be having a feeling how to please God, how to please God. How many people can even mentally try to visualize what divinity is? But what is very concrete to us is our own mother and father. Why can't we please them? In fact, Bhagwan says, if you are able to achieve the grace of your mother and father, you will be the most successful person in the entire world. Recently, we know that Ramayana and Mahabharata were telecast during the stay home, stay safe COVID season. And there is this beautiful scene in the Mahabharata where all the Kauravas are killed, all the Kauravas. And Mother Gandhari is absolutely shattered and she's crying. And this is the scene where Lord Krishna comes to meet her, and we know she actually curses Krishna that his dynasty also would come to an end in the same way, and that is what really happened. But in the process, she asks Krishna that how could you be so cruel? How could you be so cruel that all my 1,000 sons were killed? And there is a beautiful statement Lord Krishna makes. He says, Mother, how can I protect the one who has not had the blessing of the look of their own mother? He said, you tied a patti, you tied a blindfold around your eyes. Your eyesight has not even fallen on any one of your sons. How could they even get the grace of the mother? And when they can't get the grace of the physical mother, how can they get the grace of the divine mother? So, all these beautiful gems, beautiful stories in Bharatiya scriptures and Samskriti, all of them teaches such great values, such great values. India is one land where the respect for society, respect for family as a structure, respect for parents is so strong, and we must continue to sustain this. And therefore, if Bharatiya Samskriti is all about seeing the same truth in everybody, if it's all about seeing the same divine spirit in everybody, naturally, a very natural, logical outcome of that is what Bhagwan says, help ever, hurt never. Paropakaraya punyayam, papaya parapirna. Love all, serve all. As the same Lord resides in all, Swami Satya Sai Baba has put it in such very succinct terms. The essence of Bharatiya Samskriti, help, help as far as possible. I mean, even without our conscious effort, we may be hurting others, but let us not consciously hurt others. Let us help others, be it our own parents, our own family members, our relatives, our classmates, our teachers, our friends, Anybody in the community, let us always watch out. How can I help you? How can I help? Imagine a society where everybody would be waiting to help the other person. Unfortunately, we have lost these great values today, and all the time it's about me and me and me alone, which is very sad. This is not what Bharatiya Samskriti teaches us. Bharatiya Samskriti is like an ocean, all expansive, all inclusive. It says take everybody along with you, because essentially they are not different from you. All are one. My happiness would lie in the happiness of everybody around me. We cannot have islands of poverty in an ocean of prosperity, is it not? There we are. This is the next slide, and let me give you a few seconds to guess who this person is. Let's do a little test on our general knowledge. I do not know how many of you may recognize him from this generation, but he's the great social reformer Baba Amte from Maharashtra. So for those of you who do not know about him, he is a very great social worker, and he was known especially for one thing. He nurtured and treated all the leper patients, people who suffered from leprosy. In those days, it was considered to be a very negative uh, attribute in society, a stigma, but then he got all of them to his ashram, and he would treat them with so much love. Right? He was a demonstration and embodiment of Bharatiya Samskriti. But why I'm bringing in his story here is, it so happened on one occasion, one of his disciple or friend, he told Baba Amte that, Baba Amte, just close to our ashram, it's just a couple of kilometers away, there is a Vishnu temple. You have never been there. He said, I'm so surprised. You're such a great man, such a great devotee of the Lord, but all the time you are serving your people here, but you have never been to the temple. It is so close. What can we do? And this is the answer that they gave. I think somebody's audio is on. The request to mute it. Yeah. So Baba Amte
Yes,
gave
yes,
the
Baba.
answer. Why should I go to that temple of Lord Narayana when every day these very same Narayana comes to me in the form of these lepers? See what a great answer Baba Amte gave. He said, I look at Narayana in these lepers. This is what Mother Teresa said. She said, when I'm treating every person in my ashram, every poor man, I see Jesus in him. So where is the question of going to the church and seeing Jesus? That doesn't mean you do not go to temples and churches, but a higher understanding is you start seeing divinity in everybody. You see Jesus in everybody. You see Allah in everybody. We see Vishnu in everybody. We see Buddha in everybody. We see Mahavir in everybody. That is Bharatiya Samskriti. It's not about Hindu religion. Bharatiya Samskriti is a way of life. So this is what Baba Amte taught us. Jana Seva is Janardhana Seva. And Bhagwan Baba has said so many times, Man me Ram, Hath me Kam. He doesn't expect us to give up everything and then keep standing. He doesn't want to become ascetics who wear orange robes and sit in the Himalayas and meditate. But he said, heads in the forest, hands in the society. It's a beautiful sentence. Please take note. Heads in the forest, hands in the society. So you're working in society, you are doing your job, you're earning your bread and butter. Nobody asks you to stop that. You serve as many people as you can. But even as you do all this, even as we do all this, let us not forget that our main goal is to understand our divine reality. Man me Ram, Hath me Kam. Okay, one more story for you, because it may be getting monotonous. I don't want to bore you, so I have thought of putting in lots of stories. In fact, just as a little diversion, yesterday I had sent a short survey to all the participants. I'm sure the coordinator has sent you the file, and it had 7 situations, and you were asked to select the best option and the second best option from 6 options which were given for each situation. And I had told you, you will be able to understand how aligned you are to Bharatiya Samskriti. I'm reserving that for the end of my talk. I'll come to that, but I hope All of you have done that. It was very simple. Against each situation, you just had to write the number of the best option and the number of the second best option. I'll come to that later. So another story for you, again a beautiful story narrated by Bhagwan. Lord Narada, as usual, always is full of doubts and full of, you know, different ideas that he keeps sharing with Lord Vishnu. So one fine day he told Lord Vishnu, I am your greatest devotee. And is it not? So Lord Vishnu just looked mischievously but did not confirm. And so Narada was very upset. He said, Lord, I thought I am your greatest devotee. I keep doing Namasmaran throughout the day. Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. Which other human being does this? So Lord Vishnu wanted to teach a lesson to all of us through Narada. So it's all a divine play. So he tells Narada, actually, you may not be my best devotee. Why don't we just do a sort of, scan of the entire planet Earth? And then he zooms in using Google, and I'm just joking. So he uses Google, zooms in, and then, he goes to a field where there's a farmer, and this poor farmer is working, he's digging the ground. He says, hey, let's watch the one day sample of this farmer. So both Narada and Vishnu, they watch. The farmer gets up and then has his ragi ball in the morning, goes to the field, and then continuously he's working. Around lunchtime, he's sweating it out. His wife brings some very meager food, little dal and little rice or rotis or whatever it is. He eats that. Again, he works in the afternoon, and he's so tired by the time evening comes that he goes, maybe plays with his children for a few hours, and then goes to sleep. And Narada is furious. He says, Lord, why are we even wasting time on this guy? He has not even uttered your name once. So Lord Vishnu says, yes, what you say is also true. He didn't utter my name even once. So he says, let's do a, experiential exercise. HR department these days in corporates, they conduct so many exercises. So Lord Vishnu is a great HR manager. So he tells Narada, let's do one exercise, experiential learning. So he says, pot of water. As you can see, that's the pot of water on Narada's head. He says, I want you to keep this pot, and the pot is filled with water right till the brim, till the top. He says, I want you to keep this pot of water and take one whole pradakshina of the world. For Narada, it was not difficult. World was something like our house for him. So he says, you go around the world 3 times with this pot of water, but be careful, not one drop should fall down. So Narada says, what a trivial job you're giving me, Lord Vishnu. You don't know my capabilities. And so Narada actually executes the job. He keeps the pot on his head, as you see in the picture, and he takes 3 pradakshinas and promptly comes back to Lord Vishnu. He says, please measure the water. He says, even one drop has not fallen down, right? Perfect, matching, perfect. I mean, there's no loss of any drop of water. You can check it out. And Lord Vishnu checks, and indeed, not a drop of water had fallen down. And then Lord Vishnu asks Narada, Narada, when you went for these 3 pradakshinas around the world, how many times did you remember me? And then this came as a big blow to Narada, because he was so engrossed in the work given by Lord Vishnu that he had really not uttered Narayan's name even once. And then Lord Vishnu tells Narada, same is the case of the farmer. He's so engrossed in doing my work that he need not sit separately and chant my name. If he considers his work as worship, that itself is enough for me. This is another great lesson that Bharatiya Samskriti teaches us. Sarva karma bhagvat prityartham. If you get time to sit at the altar and pray, it is very good. If you get time to do meditation or dhyanam, it's very good. But if that is not possible, or even along with that, whatever we do, if all the time our mind is tuned to God, I'm doing it for you, Swami, I'm doing it for you, Krishna, I'm doing it for you, Rama, I'm doing it for you, right? That itself can transform us. Bharatiya Samskriti, that itself can transform us. So how do we offer that everything we do to God? Here's another one nice story for you. I'm putting in a lot of stories so that you don't get bored young youth, I'm sure you want a lot of nice, interesting episodes. So here's another beautiful story. How do I offer everything to God? This is a question many people ask. They say, yes, yes, we read all this. Even Bhagavad Gita says all this, but I'm going to my office. I have to do programming there, or I'm working in my kitchen, or so many different things. How in the world? Or I'm studying, for all that it is, I'm studying for my exam. How can I? So it's a preparation of the mind. We need to prepare our mind to reach a state wherein everything we do is offered to God. Here's a sculptor who's sculpting a huge idol of the Lord Vithala. It's very huge, and it so happens that when a visitor comes there, he finds that he has actually discarded almost completed idol on one side, and he's again doing a second idol. So this visitor asks the sculptor that, why have you discarded that? That is almost complete. It is so beautiful. Why are you redoing this again? The sculptor takes him. He says, you please come. And then he shows on the nose of that, the other sculpted idol. He says on the nose, can you see the small scratch here? He says, somehow, because of this scratch, I'm not happy. He says, how it will look. It will, Lord's idol having a small scratch here. And when the visitor heard this, he started laughing loudly. He says, you're really a fool. Right? He says, you're really a fool. This idol is almost 50 feet tall, right? You can't even see the face of the idol from where you're standing. You're talking of a small scratch on the nose. How foolish. Which visitor or which, tourist person who comes can see this? Why are you making such a big fuss about this? To that, the sculptor replied, you're right. You cannot see it. Nobody can see it. But my Vithala can see it. See, what a beautiful thought, which means he was making that idol to satisfy Lord Vithala, not to satisfy the tourists who come and see the idol, not to satisfy the guests who come and see there or the devotees who come. He was making it for Lord Vithala. In the same way, if I am studying for my CBSE exams, am I doing it for a job? Am I doing it for money? Am I just doing it because of the force of my parents? Or am I doing it to please the Lord? I'm going to the office, I'm doing some work there. Yes, I may be earning an income, it is my job, but can I also take it as a way to worship my Lord? This is Karma Yoga. I'm just showing you this slide to show how our ancients, the ancients, great sages and rishis of Bharat, beautifully gave us these three approaches. The Bharata Samskriti gives you three royal pathways to understand your divine reality. One is Karma Yoga, which we just talked about now. One is the worship, which is Bhakti Yoga. And one is the path of wisdom or the Jnana Yoga. And Bhagwan says, don't worry, all the three are like the three tires, the wheels of an auto. So for the auto to go smoothly, all the three are required. So each one of us will be doing a little bit of Bhakti Yoga, a little bit of Karma Yoga, a little bit of Jnana Yoga, and one of them may be more dominant in each one of us. So this is Bharatiya Samskriti. And to be more specific, you may have heard of the Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga, which gives us the eightfold path to reach divinity. This also is a great gift of Bharatiya Samskriti. I will just touch upon it without going into the details. These 8 steps are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Please, as Indian citizens, as Bharatiya citizens, I'm again not talking about the geographical land, but those who have great pride for Bharat should know about this wonderful contribution of Bharatiya culture, the Ashtanga Yoga. Let's repeat the 8 steps once again, and you can also repeat with me. The first step is Yama, the second step is Niyama, the third step is Asana, the fourth step is Pranayama, the fifth step is Pratyahara, then it is Dharana, the seventh is Dhyana, and the eighth is what is called Samadhi, full of equanimity, the happiest man. So the first three, Yama, Niyama, and Asana. Asana is what we call the Yogasana, which has become universally popular today. It all talks about the control over the body. These three are mainly focusing on how to control the human body. The next three, pranayama, pratyahara, and dharana, how to control the mind, right? And then dhyana and samadhi, how to realize the inner soul. So there are three steps: human physical body, the mind, and then our inner reality. So it's a beautiful 8-step process to understand our true divine nature. And this is what, again, I'm bringing you another quote of Bhagwan, which talks about the essence of our Bharatiya culture. Our Bharatiya culture is all about Daiva Preeti, love for God, Papa Bhiti, fear of sin, and Sanghaniti, morality in society. There can be no greater times than these when this is very essential for all of us. You must have love for God, we must have fear of sin, and that is how we can have morality in society. In fact, Bhagwan says today it has become just the other way around, that we have love for sin and we have fear for God, and therefore there is immorality in society. So let us not fear God. God is our own inner reality. God can never be angry with us. God can never be disappointed with us. He is our eternal companion, our eternal companion. But what we need to fear is sin and not God. Let's go forward. Um, So we have heard this from many people, Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. In fact, there was a beautiful musical video that was made recently by L.V. Subramanyam, Kavita Krishnamurti, and others, where all the great singers are singing this mantra of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, wherein the whole world is one family. This is the gift of Bharatiya Samskriti. It does not appreciate geographical boundaries. It does not consider different countries and different people as different. It says essentially all are one. So let's keep this in mind. Let me come to our customs and traditions. When we talk of Bharatiya Samskriti or Indian culture, it is very difficult to delink it from the various traditions and customs that are embedded in our culture. So let me quickly browse through a few of them and explain how Swami gives the inner significance of each of these. I'll just run through them quickly. For example, the whole tradition of drawing rangolis outside our house, which is slowly disappearing today. We do it with plastic and then think it's just a decoration, but no. Swami says, and we can read it up in a lot of literature, these rangolis are made with rice flour. And when we would make it with the rice flour, this would become food for all those ants and insects which come, around the house. In fact, it was a type of protection. It would prevent these insects from coming into the house because they would get food right at the doorstep. And also, it is a type of seva wherein you're feeding all these creatures, and that is why the ancients, the people of the bygone years would draw these rangolis, and many of them even do today with rice flour and not with some synthetic material. So all these were built into our Samskriti, our lifestyle. Look at this. Tying the green leaves or the toranams, on our doorstep. What a beautiful thing. Again, here Bhagwan says, today we tie plastic leaves. And then he explains that was not the idea. The idea of doing this is, as we know, plants, they take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. So even after the leaves are picked, this process goes on for a couple of hours. And therefore, whenever we have green leaves tied, there is a lot of freshness, especially when there are large gatherings, marriages and other functions. Tying these green leaves would help to minimize the density of carbon dioxide in the air. So there was so much of science behind all our traditions and practices. Here's one more example of breaking a coconut. We know, we all see in the temples, we break a coconut, and does it mean God wants a coconut? Obviously not. Maybe God is helping the coconut vendors to make some business because we buy these coconuts. But Swami again gives a very nice interpretation for this. And everything, what Bhagwan does is he connects every ritual, every tradition and every practice of Bharatiya Samskriti to a higher truth, to a higher purpose. And he says, look at a coconut. Please visualize a coconut. You have the outside fiber on it. Then you have what you see in the deck here. You have got the shell, and inside you have this beautiful kernel which we use in our cooking. So Bhagwan says the outer husk or the fiber is like tamas, a tamasic quality as we call it. The shell that you see here is like rajas, and the kernel that you see inside is sattva. And he says, when you're actually breaking the coconut, you must remember in your mind that you must remove the tamas or the outside fiber. You must break the rajas or the shell of the coconut and then reach out to the kernel, which is sattva. And when really we are able to control all these three gunas in us, I'm not going to delve into the in-depth meaning of tamas, rajas, and sattva. You can read up on it later if you wish to. But these are the three main gunas or qualities or attributes in human beings which is responsible for our personality and our behavior. So Bhagwan says if you have a proper control on these three, you will get the beautiful coconut water inside, which is ananda or which is bliss. So in this way, everything we do has a higher meaning in Bharatiya Samskriti. What we most often see is the arati, which we perform in all the temples and after all the functions, and one may wonder what is the symbolic meaning of this Bharatiya tradition or practice called the arati. There may be many different interpretations, but one thing I remember Bhagwan talked about was the camphor, which we use in arati. Typically we use camphor. Now camphor has got a very specific attribute that it sublimates. I'm sure students of chemistry will understand this very easily. We have done it in our school, that when camphor burns from solid, it straight away becomes gas. It doesn't enter the liquid phase. So this is the way our bad habits should be completely purged. We should not put them into action. It should not get into liquid state. This is called sublimation. So we must sublimate our bad habits. We must sublimate our evil qualities. This is what the practice of arati teaches us. This is the yajna which we perform, the sacrifices. Innumerable number of discourses Swami has explained that it's not about sacrificing animals, it's not about other sacrifices, it is about sacrificing our own bad qualities. It is about sacrificing our own evil qualities. That is what a really yajna is all about. So I've just thrown in a few examples here to explain to you, especially the youth of today who may find that all these rituals, practices are so complicated and what is the purpose of all this. But please pause. There is a higher science behind all this. Let's try and discover the science. And, for example, typically outside the Ganesha temple, you have people who hold their ears, they cross their hands, hold their ears, and then they do sit-ups. Today, science has shown that this has a tremendous scientific meaning. These are those, the points here are called the subtle points, which actually boost your immunity. One of the immunity exercises which people are teaching during this COVID-19 days is, you keep pulling your ears like this. This stimulates all the glands in this area, which helps you to enhance your immunity. So what did the ancients do? They made this a ritual. They made this a practice wherein you hold your hands and do baitaks in front of Ganesha's temple. So every ritual, every tradition of Bharatiya Samskriti has great science behind it. I do hope all of you, whenever you can, do some research and find out that science, and it has symbolism behind it. Sometimes even if there may be no science behind it, there is symbolism behind it, or both. Okay, I think we have come to 8 o'clock. I have spoken for a very long time. I hope you all are not bored. I will just conclude within a few more minutes and then I'll take you to that survey also. So be with me. A lot of questions may be coming up in your mind, and I'm so happy that the organizers have arranged a Q&A session in the evening so that it's not a one-way talk. Honestly, I never appreciate these one-way talks. As a teacher, I have always enjoyed a lot of interaction with my students and with the audience, and therefore I'm very uncomfortable speaking in front of my laptop screen, looking at nothing but my own slide. But maybe this is the time to connect spiritually, right? We are in fact talking about Bharatiya Samskriti, which talks of, you know, the unity in amongst all of us. So maybe it's time we really connect to each other as the Atma and feel our vibes. Okay, as I come to the close of my talk, the another way of defining culture is also sensitivity to others' feelings. Bharatiya Samskriti says always have concern for the others. So just like you have intelligent quotient IQ, emotional quotient EQ, what is sensitivity quotient? How quickly do we respond to the needs and concerns of others around us? The migrant workers are suffering, they don't have food. Quickly Satya Sai Seva organization set up kitchens around the country, and we started cooking food and then helping them out. How quickly can we translate our concern for others into action that helps them? This is sensitivity quotient. I'm just throwing in one or two stories here also. The first one I'll tell you, have been a personal witness to it. What you see here, for those of you who have not visited Puttaparthi, may not know about Bhagwan. This is the room where Swami would call devotees for what we call as an interview. This was a room where he had an audience with the devotees. And on one occasion, I remember when I had gone in here, I was the last person to enter the room. And you know, just behind where you see Swami is walking, it's a very small room. You can see the wall behind. It's such a small room, just like what we have kitchen in a house, something like that. At the corner there is a chair where Bhagwan is seated. So on that occasion, when a couple of others had gone in, faculty and students, I was the last one. And Swami said close the door. And I remember I actually held the door and did not honestly bang it, but definitely I closed it a little hard and it made a little sound. Instantly, Swami pointed out to me, he said, "That's not correct." So I was like perplexed. I said, "What's not correct?" I didn't ask him, I was asking myself what went wrong. Swami said, "See, the door also has life in it. Don't think that just because the door is inert, divinity is not there in the door." I was so stunned. You know, here was Bhagwan, who essentially is the divine energy. He said, "See, even the door feels hurt. You don't have to bang it." And then you will not believe, he got up, came to where I was standing, opened the door, and showed me how to close it. He said, "See, gently close it and leave it." It was such a great lesson for me. I cannot forget it till date, as to how we must be sensitive to others. So here was Swami being sensitive to a wooden door. Imagine the amount of sensitivity we need to have towards people whom you can see, you know, in whom you can see the pain. This brings me to my second story. Uh, whom do you see on the screen? It's the picture is a little blurred and you may not be able to exactly make out, but come on, quick guesses. Can anybody take a guess? Which episode of Mahabharata is this?
When Ashwathama killed the sons of Pandavas.
Fantastic. Somebody replied 100 out of 100. It is exactly that. So when Ashwathama, you know, Duryodhana had been killed in the battle, and you know, Ashwathama is Drona's son. Drona, you know Drona? Drona was the teacher of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So Ashwathama, who was the son of Drona, who was on the Kauravas side, gets so wild. He comes into the tent of the Pandavas, and this was violating the ethics of war. You were not supposed to attack at night, but he comes, and out of anger he kills all the 5 children of Draupadi. I mean, it's something so miserable you can't even imagine, right? And the morning Draupadi gets up, sees all the dead sons, and she's in immense pain. She's in so much misery. If one son dies, you can imagine how the mother feels. Here were all the 5 children dead. The Pandavas catch Abhimanyu, bring him, arrest him, and then Bhima says, "Draupadi, just give me the command, and I'm going to just kill this guy." And this is very important. Listen to this. Somebody's audio is on, kindly mute it. So it's so beautiful. Draupadi says she tells the Pandavas not Muted now. Okay, I think you can listen to me again. You're not missed much. What I said was when the Pandavas wanted to kill Ashwathama, Draupadi in fact prevents them from killing Ashwathama, and look at her feelings. Very important. Look at her feelings and her mental thought. She says, "What will you gain by killing Ashwathama? If you kill him, his mother will undergo the same misery that I am undergoing, and therefore the five Upapandavas or the five children cannot come alive because you're just going to kill him." So she says, please do not put another mother into the same misery that this mother is undergoing. See, look at the Vishala Bhavam, as Swami calls it, the enormous feeling, the feeling of generosity. There's no revenge. Bharatiya Samskriti never advocates revenge. Yes, at times when you have to take action, you may have to take action, but it does not advocate revenge. This is Bharatiya Samskriti. So I'm almost summing up my talk now by saying that culture and spirituality are not two different aspects. In fact, Bharatiya culture or Samskriti is all about taking us on the spiritual path. And that is why it is intertwined, and that is why the summer course is called Summer Course in Indian Spirituality and Culture. And here's a beautiful definition given by Bhagwan for spirituality. Very concise 3-line definition. We can forget all other definitions if we can remember this. It says, and this is what Bharata Samskriti helps us to do: give up all animal qualities, develop and nurture all human qualities, and bring forth or manifest all divine qualities. This is the essence of Bharatiya Samskriti. All the festivals, all the traditions, all the practices, all our great epics, all our scriptures and the characters in these scriptures all teach us only this: give up animal qualities, nurture human qualities, and bring forth the divine qualities in us so that we become good global citizens, good instruments of the Lord. Let me close with this. What is the right time to commence the transformation process, in case many of you are feeling that this can be done later, post-retirement, blah, blah, blah. Here is again Swami. In fact, he has mentioned this, and I brought it here because he has mentioned this in the 1972 discourses. And this analogy I'm giving you, he has mentioned elsewhere. He says, this is very typical. I'm sure your mouths must be watering now. Many of you would not have had breakfast. I'm so sorry to bring in this picture now. But anyway, I'm sure you'll have breakfast in a short while. So, normally in South India, we have this practice of putting all the food items on a banana leaf. And then Swami asks this question, when do you offer this food to God? So obviously your answer will be before you start eating the food. When everything is spread on the food like this, we offer it as naivedyam to the Lord, and then take it and eat it as prasad. Now Swami says, suppose you don't do that, instead you eat everything, and then the banana leaf is torn and lot of food items are left over that, and now suppose you take all that and then offer it at God's feet. How will it be? I mean, even thinking of that, you will feel, oh my God, I mean, how crazy would anybody even do that? But then Bhagwan says that is what you are doing. When you say that all this is not for this time, it can come later. He says, when later? After retirement, when you become like a torn banana leaf? Swami says, no. He says, this is the right time. When we are youth, when we are in our teens, when we are going to school and colleges, when we understand what life is all about, this is the right time to understand the significance of Bharatiya Samskriti, take the Samskriti, transform ourselves into divine instruments, and play our respective roles whatever Bhagwan wishes in this world. So I'm stopping my talk here. I will take another 5 minutes maybe to explain this survey which I had sent to all of you yesterday. I hope this almost, I guess I spoke for 1 hour, 10 minutes or so. I hope I did not bore all of you. I brought in lots of stories, lots of symbolism, and I hope that this has given you some idea of what is this Bharatiya Samskriti, what is this Indian culture, right? It is not something small, it's something very vast, and it is something so noble, something so lofty, and we have just explored a few aspects of Bharatiya Samskriti today. Now, coming to the last part, I'm not sure how many of you got a chance to see this. It was a PPT deck sent to you as a PDF file. There were 7 situations in that. Okay, and these are all situations I picked up from our day-to-day life. Especially, I'm sure it'll appeal to the youth. There was one situation about how you would use your first salary. There was another situation about, what would you do if you won a trophy in a sports event? What would you really do that? And there was one about a dancer who's performing for the first time. There was another situation about you getting a job abroad, but your parents don't want to resettle there. What would you do? There was another situation about how would you celebrate your 30th birthday if you were not there with your parents, and why I said 30 years is, by that time, the craze for partying and, cutting cakes and all may be a little less. So at that time, if you're away from your parents, how would you celebrate your birthday and so on? And each situation had 6 options, and I very clearly mentioned none of these options were wrong or right. Everything was right. In fact, all of us may like to do all the 6, but I had asked you to prioritize the best option and the second best option. So I hope that in this was the scoring sheet. You can see 7 situations, and in the second column I had asked you to write down the number of the situation, right? The 1 2 3 4 5 6. So again, situation 1, the best option could be 3, the best option could have been 2, or whatever it is. The third column, which was scoring, I asked you to leave it blank. Then the fourth column, which was the second best option, is for the same situation 1. Suppose say 3 was your best option, maybe the second best option was 5, you could have put 5 there. Or suppose 6 was your best option, that comes in the second column. And if let us say 2 was your second best option, that comes in the fourth column. And the last column, again, I had asked you to leave it blank because I told you I will give you the scores. There we are. Now, if you have done this, and for all of you who have done this, I'm going to show you the scoring sheet. For those of you who have not done this, keep the scoring sheet with you, take a snapshot on your screen, keep it with you, but please don't look at this and select your options. Please respond to the situations without looking at the scoring sheet, and then you can come back to the scoring sheet later to see and understand how aligned you are to Bharatiya Samskriti. So here's the scoring sheet, guys. Please look at the screen. So I'll just explain to you how it works. If for situation 1, you have selected the best option as 3, okay, then this is your score. S1 is your score. If for situation 1 you have selected 3 as the best option, please put S1 against it in the scoring column. If let us say for situation 1 you have selected 5 as your best option, put A1 over there. I hope you have drawn this table on some piece of paper so that you can put the scores. On the other hand, now same way, suppose your second best option was 1, the score is I2. If the second best option was 6, the score is S2. Okay. So same way, please quickly for every situation based on what is the number you have written, please give yourself a score. Okay, now I'm assuming you have written down your scores. Now we have 2 options. Either I reveal the interpretation of the scores in my morning talk, or I do it in my evening talk. So shall I leave it as a suspense till the evening? Or shall I reveal it now? Okay, are you writing down your scores? Okay. I hope by now you would have written down for all the 7 situations your scores. So the scores will appear as either S1 or S2, A1 or A2, I1 or I2. It consists of these 6 different alphanumeric characters. I'll just give you one more minute to note down your scores in your table. Those of you who have not taken the survey, please take it at your own convenience whenever you can, but keep the scoring sheet with you for looking at it later. Okay, I'm actually going to move ahead now and tell you the secret behind the scoring. You will laugh at me and you will laugh at yourself because it's very simple. There is no complexity in this, but this is what you need to do. Count all these scores. There will be 14 scores, right? Because 7 best options and 7 second best options. So on the whole, there'll be 14 scores. Please count how many, forget the 1 and 2 which comes, okay? Look at how many S's you have, how many A's you have, how many I's you have. That's the next computation. Please count how many S's are there, how many A's are there, and how many I's are there in your score. So whether it is S1 or S2, take it as S. Whether it is A1 or A2, take it as A. Whether it is I1 or I2, take it as I. So count how many S's, how many A's, and how many I's are there. And now tell me, I mean, you can't tell me because it's not an interactive session. So tell yourself if your S's are greater than A's and A's are greater than I's, then you are very much aligned to Bharatiya Samskruti. Yes, it comes to Sai, but there is an inner meaning to that. If your S is greater than A's and A's are greater than I's, then you are very much aligned to Bharatiya Samskruti. Why? I will close my talk with the meaning behind this. SAI stands for God first. I have put it as Sai first, association next, and I last. So the responses in the situation where the scores are S1 and S2 are responses where you are doing something relating, you're sort of respecting your parents or you're offering something to God. The A1, A2 scored responses where you're doing something for your, family members or for your friends. And the I1, I2 responses were those where you're doing it only for yourself. So that was the basic uh, meaning behind these 6 responses. So I'm sure when you now look at it, go back and look at it, you will understand the, Da Vinci code behind it. So in case you have got S greater than I greater than S greater than A greater than I, feel very happy. In case you have not got it, you know how you have to really maybe reprioritize your opportunities in life. So it's 8:23 and I would like to close here. So let me first of all express my deep sense of gratitude to Bhagwan Baba, who has given me this opportunity to interact all of you, even during such challenging situations as the COVID-19, thanks to technology, which is also a gift of God. I thank the state president of Sri Satya Sai Seva Organizations, Odisha, all the office bearers, Sri Umakanta Subuddhi, the course coordinator, Siddharth and others who have been my IT supporters. I thank all of you. And above all, I thank my dear students, both boys and girls, who have really taken their time off, got up early in the morning and have very cheerfully joined us for this session. Thank you for your hearing. I do hope that this talk would have been of some use to you and this would have helped you to explore some aspects of Bharatiya Samskruti. I also thank my own university and our Vice Chancellor for permitting me to share my thoughts with all of you. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram.
Sairam sir, it seems everyone
Sai-
present over here wants me to express his or her appreciation and heartfelt gratitude for your inspiring and interactive session taken us through such an engrossing, lovely journey through the epics and narrations about customs and characters of Indian culture, explaining the vastness and solid roots of Bharat and Bharatiya Sanskriti that establish Sarvakarma Bhagavat Prityartham. We are sure enough that this session will help our Vidyarthis to understand our vast Bharatiya Sanskriti is the epitome of love and enlightenment that has shown the path of wisdom to the rest of the world, may it be through its Vedas or Puranas or through its all-inclusive belief of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Thanks a lot, sir, for your expression of love and wisdom. We sincerely appreciate your efforts to educate us and convey Swami's message with so much of concern and involvement. Now I am little mean in expressing my jealousy about the students of Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. Sir, we are grateful to you and wish that our beloved Swami bless you with grace and love. Sai Ram.
Thank you, sir.
Now,
Thank you.
Now we expect our Vidyarthis to go through the chapters 14 to 16 of Summer Hours in Vrindavan 1972 and do manana on the subject and place their questions in the WhatsApp group meant for them. We will share all those questions with Rangarajan sir. He will have a discussion over them in the evening session. Now, let's take permission from Bhagwan and pray our beloved Master for a bhajan from his golden voice. Sai Ram.
Love is my form, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, this is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, this is my food. My life is my message, expansion is my life. My life is my message, expansion is my life. My life is my message, expansion is my life. My life is my message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no reason for love, no back, no death. No season for love, no reason for love, no back, no death. Prema Satya Ananda, Shanti Satya Ananda. Prema Satya Ananda, Shanti Satya Ananda. Prema Satya Ananda, Shanti Dharma Ananda. Prema Satya Ananda, Shanti Dharma Ananda. Shirdi Sai Patti Baba Jai Jai. Shirdi Sai Patti Baba Jai Jai. Shirdi Sai Patti Sai Prema Sai Jai Jai. Shirdi Sai Patti Sai Prema Sai Jai Jai. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home. Love is my palm, truth is my breath, peace is my home.
Shanti. शांति शांति शांति। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की
जय
जय।
जय